Hello everyone to a new Backbase webinar. My name is Jelmer Jong and I'm here together with Jouk, Pleiter.
Good morning, good evening.
And today we're here to talk about the topic disruption in banking. We will use 60 minutes of your time to talk about this topic. But before we go ahead, I want to point out a few elements. Of course, first of all, thank you very much for joining. This is our last webinar in 2014. And looking at the numbers, the attendees piling in, this is also the most successful webinar of 2014. So thank you very much for making that possible. We're very, very happy with that.
Yeah, great.
Of course, as you know from Backbase, this is a quite interactive webinar. So we will present some slides. Jouk and I will talk about the major trends we see in the market. But of course, you in the audience also have the option to ask questions. So please use the question panel into the GoToMeeting control panel on your right-hand side to type your questions. I will make sure that I monitor that and ask the questions if relevant. Of course, you can also participate on Twitter. Use hashtag Backbase to ask your questions or post your comments on Twitter. And the most commonly asked questions, will a recording and will the slides be available? And of course, the answer is yes. Within 48 hours after the webinar, we'll upload the slides and recording to our YouTube and SlideShare channels, and also make sure that we send an email to everyone registered so you have that in your file and you can share that freely with your colleagues as well.
Great, okay. Good, so the major topic for today is disruption in banking and customer behavior changing. So if we look at the key driver of this year, but also most likely this trend will continue for next year, is that customer behavior is rapidly changing, and that is typically introduced by players like Netflix. Great new products that just kind of revolutionizing broadcasting. You can watch this on your desktop, on your tablet, on your smartphone, and on your regular television station. A complete new experience, and basically we rarely watch regular television anymore.
It's all about convenience. It's so easy. You can just have that instant satisfaction. You open up the show you want to watch. Don't want to have to follow a TV guide or wait till somebody broadcasts what you like to see. No, you are in control. You're not only in control, you can also use it anytime, any place, whatever device.
Yep. So if we talk about disruption in banking, players from Silicon Valley, players outside of the banking industry are basically raising customer expectations. Let us talk about a few examples in the industry.
Yeah, Uber. Of course, it's not very original, but this is not just a small app anymore. Uber is taking that convenience that we see from Netflix and bringing that to disrupt the complete market, the transportation market. It started out with big luxury cars, but now everybody can become a taxi driver and everybody can just hail a cab. Very simple. Don't worry about payments. Don't worry about tipping. And everything is just in your pocket. It's as easy as what you want.
Yeah, it's great. And the interesting part, this company is only 4 years old. It started with a little idea a couple of years ago to basically disrupt and to revolutionize transportation and taxi monopolies around the world. And today, if you look at the growth rates of this company, phenomenal. Revenues exceeding 1 billion in revenue, valuations of the company at extremely high levels. This company is only 4 years old and it's just disrupting a classic protected industry from the past. Imagine what's going to happen if there's a Uber in banking.
And there are, I think, a few Ubers in banking already.
Yeah, one of the examples you see here is Lending Club. Also, this company is only a few years old and they basically are looking at inefficiency in the traditional banking industry. They take elements like crowdsourcing, what we see with Uber, what we see with Airbnb, and they basically do peer-to-peer lending. So where the traditional banks, there's no transparency and you basically are forced to go a bank. And if you look at the spreads, the interest spreads, basically the bank is paying around zero interest if you have a deposit. And if you have to loan, it's between 12 and 16%. So a huge spread. And it's all because of the fact that there's no peer-to-peer collaboration. So imagine an Airbnb model where people can actually share each other's apartments or houses. Now apply this to banking. And this is happening. Within probably a few months, Lending Club will go and file for IPO. And also this little startup is getting big. Only in a couple of years, out of nothing, starting to disrupt banking. And it's ready to do its own IPO at a valuation between 4 and 5 billion. So these stories about startups disrupting, these startups grow up and they're not just little companies. If we look at kind of 2014, 2014 is really the year that it became mainstream that, convenience, simplicity, and startups completely disrupting the traditional industries, it's happening. It's not anymore a small startup or a nice idea. These companies are getting big. They are on growth trajectories that are similar to Google, growth trajectories that are similar to Facebook. And now they are getting very close to banking.
And it's not just one. I very much like this example. We got this from the blog of Thomas Lefero. Later on, we will share the slides. You can click this to read the full blog post. But what Tom did was he takes the homepage of Wells Fargo in this example, but this is applicable for every big bank in North America and Europe, and just map that with the latest fintech startups. And not even startups, even bigger companies. You see there's a challenger for every product category.
Yeah. And so indeed, this is totally not about Wells Fargo, but this is about any bank. And what you basically see here, the navigation structure of the products offered by a regular bank, large bank, small bank, doesn't really matter. But all these different product categories are now challenged by people like Uber, like Lending Club, that are getting it easy, convenience, and also really market efficiencies, cutting out the middleman, getting direct connections between and customers. If you look, for instance, at the wealth management space with Betterment and Wealthfront, these guys are growing at a phenomenal pace. Their assets under management with virtually no marketing effort are in the billions of dollars. People start to realize in wealth management, we don't need a physical human advisor anymore. We can just rely on an algorithm. And most likely the algorithm is smarter than a human advisor. So very interesting to see these type of trends.
So there is a lot of challenge going on, and a lot of startups, a lot of new companies are after the banking market. But of course, that was 2014. In this webinar, we're going to look ahead in 2015.
Yep.
I think we agree there is disruption going on. There are a lot of challengers becoming more and more active. So it's time to challenge the challenger, and banks have to become a disruptor themselves.
Yes. All right. So basically what we try to do is to think, okay, what can banks really do with their, banks are in a relative good position. They have customers, they have a certain level of brand trust, they have systems, they have install base. So given all that power, how can banks actually become competitive in this digital landscape? The overall umbrella is what we call digital transformation. How can banks start to utilize modern technologies like web, mobile, tablets, API strategies, and how can they actually kind of reinvent themselves to be extremely competitive in this new era of digital banking?
So what we're doing in this webinar, we defined the key focus points with regards to digital transformation for 2015. We're going to start with the customer experience. We're going to talk about the omni-channel delivery model. We're going to talk about how banks need to regain control of their own digital strategy. And of course, it's all defining your brand. You need to inspire, you need to have a purpose. That's going to be the main focus area of this webinar.
Yeah. So if we go to the first topic, I think it's very easily said and hardly done, but I think the fundamental truth for all these disruptors we've seen, like Lending Club, like Uber, etc., they start with the user. They start with a very basic need of the user, and they define a total business model and a total user experience that is completely focused on optimizing, fulfilling the end user needs. It's all about simplicity, convenience, and basically changing complex processes into something that can be easily done in the digital world. So if we look at customer behavior, especially in the context of banking, maybe some of you have seen this picture before, but it is totally true. The way customers are interacting with banks are dramatically shifting from brick and mortar into digital. So we call this the shift to digital, and basically every year this shift will accelerate with Gen Y, younger people, but also people that are above their 40s. People basically will interact with the bank many times per month, 5 to 30 times per month via digital channels, and only a few times per year in the classical channel. So digital transformation and focusing on customer needs in the digital channel is paramount. So how to do that?
It's very important when we talk about customer experience, you have to be there where the customer is. And where the customer is, there's the customer journey. And nowadays, the customer journey is not behind the computer, it's not in the call center, it's not in the branch office, but more and more, the customer experience and the customer journey starts on the mobile device. Customers expect something instant and seamless, like we see with Uber, like we see with Netflix. So the journey starts here. It's people want to accomplish something. The first thing they do, they open their smartphone.
Yeah, and I think what we have done in the past, the journey was not starting with the customer. The journey was starting with product management, or let's introduce a new savings product, and then let's figure out what the customer wants. So this is a very fundamental thing. This is about, forget about products, forget about your backend systems, but analyze the end customer, analyze different customer segments, and analyze their needs in particular context. Indeed, that can be with a smartphone, it could also be with a desktop, but the fundamental thing is first understand the user, understand their key needs, and then from that starting point, you start to reason back into your backend. If we want to fulfill this kind of Uber idea in the context of banking, or if we want to create the Netflix of banking, it all starts with the need of the end user, and then we have to figure and reason backwards, what does it mean for our technology, what does it mean for our processes, and what does it mean for our systems? And that's exactly where it becomes a little bit more complicated. So but the trend is clear. First focus on the user and then start reasoning back in what needs to be done.
Yeah, this journey starts on the left-hand side with the customer, of course, but the hard work happens in the backend. It happens, of course, in your own organizational systems. You have your technology, you have your systems, and you have your processes. And they need to become available and flexible enough to really start focusing on that customer experience.
Yeah, Jelmer, and isn't that really a challenge for most of these banks that, you know, a small bank and you're basically hijacked by a big vendor, you cannot make any changes, or you're a very large bank and you basically have a very slow process to make these changes?
Yes, I think that's the most common scenario that every financial institution will definitely recognize. But that's also the biggest focus area, what we believe for 2015, to focus with your digital transformation programs on increasing flexibilities.
So this, I guess, if we don't nail this, basically it's dead on arrival.
With a proper and flexible backend, you can never start innovating on the front end.
Yeah. Okay, let's zoom into that a little bit. Let's now zoom back, people, for everybody in the audience. We go back to here, the end user, and analyze a customer-centric design approach. So what you see here on the screen is something people define as design for moments of truth. You have a particular end user in the context of a private banking end customer, a family, a CFO, a treasurer, whatever the end user might be. Focus on their particular context, identify the moments of truth and their context, and then you basically go into an iterative cycle of, I think, kind of prototyping, I guess. Don't think about products, don't think about the backend for now, but just focus on, in an ideal world, if you could just sketch and you could just prototype, what would be the ideal customer journey for a specific end user segment?
Yeah, and if we talk about identifying that ideal customer journey, it's not about the journey on sea. It's about the moments in the context.
Mm-hmm.
What do I want to accomplish at a certain time? And there you will see that I would design something I do on my mobile phone because I'm on the road that has a different context than designing something for a desktop interface where I have a different plan because I open a larger computer and I have also a different context and different behaviors there.
Yeah, we've discussed this topic in the past and we'll refer to this as service design. So it's not just mobile or it's not just an app. It's basically the different touch points like call center, like desktop, like mobile devices, that together the customer journey can actually touch different kind of channels or devices in order to complete the customer journey. But what is really critical for now is just to analyze new business models and real customer needs without considering the backend limitations for a moment. Okay, so basically what you see here on the screen is kind of nicely summarizing that. If you look at the old school type of approach in banking, basically, I would say in most of the cases, unfortunately, the design was always from the inside out. Let's start with our own product groups. Let's start with the limitations of our own existing systems. We've got a whole bunch of siloed type of legacy applications. And then, eventually there's a little bit of user experience on top of it to make it, run in a browser. or to make it accessible on a smartphone. But the fundamental approach in the traditional approach is inside out, product centric, IT centric.
Yeah, you see that, I think, pretty clear reflected in this picture. When you start from the inside out, your heavyweight will your hardware, your infrastructure, and the lightweight will definitely be the user experience. What we see that is successful for most banks that really are becoming a good bank, becoming a customer-focused bank. They're starting design from the outside in, the outside-in approach. The outside-in approach has the heavy weight on user experience and data. Then we get to the software, and then we worry about the backend systems that maybe are holding us back.
So that's interesting. Of course, it starts with the user, so the UX part kind of doubles. But basically, if you take UX and data all together, it's like 50% of the solution.
Yes, because
so it's a whole different mix.
If you turn it around, if you start thinking about the customer doesn't care about hardware, infrastructure, network, or backend complexities. They care about creating a beautiful customer experience that's personal relevant.
Yeah.
And for that, you need data, you need a proper customer profile, you need smart targeting, and that's exactly, again, what made Netflix so successful in the first place.
Yeah.
Focus on that front end, focus on UX and data.
So that was the first topic. Start with the customer experience, start with the end customer need, focus on these moments of truth, and then start to reason inside the underlying IT hardware and infrastructure components. Let's move to the next topic. Pursue an omni-channel delivery model. Why omni-channel? I think what we now see nowadays, and we've seen it in previous discussions in our webinar series, is that customers will interact with the bank on multiple touch points. And what is critical here is that these touch points are not just siloed experience with a different UI and a different brand experience. So that's one. Basically, you would like to have brand consistency. Secondly, you would like to have nice handover points between these different devices, just like your Netflix experience at home. You can watch it on your desktop, and then you go to the television station, and basically you can continue the movie exactly where you paused at the other device.
Yeah, what for me makes omni-channel is first of all making sure myself as an end customer gets the same brand experience no matter what channel or device I'm using.
Right.
Of course, we're showing devices here, but for me, omni-channel also includes the customer contact center, the branch office, or the agent I may be talking to.
So basically make all these different touch points work together as one.
Make them work together as one and give me the same experience. Be the same bank no matter how you're talking to me.
Yeah.
By doing that, it's essential that you work from the same customer profile.
Same customer profile?
It's very essential that when I do something on my smartphone, I don't have to do that same action on the desktop as well, because I did it on purpose.
So basically you like to have something like a channel orchestration thing that can make sure that you can easily move from one channel to another channel, and basically you can pick up where you left it.
That's the third step indeed, handover.
Handover. Yeah.
Starting a journey on your mobile phone when you're on the road, finishing up that form on your tablet when you're at home, maybe upload an extra document on your regular computer if necessary, and always when you need support, be able to contact the customer contact center and don't have to start telling, now I did this on step 1 or I have to start over again. No, this is it. Here, Mr. De Jong, we know where you are. We can help you complete on step 3.
Yeah, great, Jelmer. I hear you say, and it sounds perfect, but this is like the ideal nirvana, right? Most of the banks and most of our customers are, not at this level. We have a separate website, we have a couple of separate mobile apps, we have a different call center app, we have silos, right?
There are silos, but the way forward for 2015 is move away from the traditional bank, move away from that legacy approach.
Yeah, so I think that is kind of the challenge, what we kind of see here in this diagram. This is kind of what is happening with most traditional banks and their legacy approach. Basically, all the essential layers are in one monolithic code base. And it's not just one code base, this is just a website. There are multiple websites, so multiple monolithic silos where UX, banking application logic, banking infrastructure is basically one stiff pillar or one stiff silo of logic. And we're basically repeating this in the call center, with an agent portal, with a set of mobile apps. We're basically repeating the same type of pattern. So let's analyze some of these disruptive banks and see how they do it.
I think they turn it around. What you already see on the slide is they move way more to a layered approach.
Right.
A flexible layer in the front end that can dedicated focus UX and marketing.
So where this one is kind of, I guess, way more vertical, I guess, right? This one is way more layered horizontal.
Best of breed for every layer that you need for your bank.
So basically, you wonder, how is it possible that little startups like Meuven or Simple can actually launch a bank in, less than a year, maybe a little bit more, a very nice user experience. So I guess they just focus on the UX, they focus on the UX and on the marketing, and then basically they leverage underlying infrastructure.
Yeah, they have some very strong banking APIs in place that they link to the banking infrastructure provided by, for example, a bank core, or other providers that are out there that can help you with bill pay, with remote check deposit, by the communication to the underlying rails that's still very much important, still in place.
So I guess with this approach, you basically can also then, I guess, they can switch their core banking platform. Or they can, maybe that's a little bit too aggressive, but they could actually relatively easy add new capabilities. They don't have to own that technology. They can go to Duola and add peer-to-peer payment if required.
Yeah, they can very easily find new providers and better providers to help them with international transfers, with bill pay, with money movement, and just mix and match best of breed. Since the APIs are in place, it doesn't have any impact on the front end, and the backend links are also there and stable.
Right. So, but if I'm a big bank, what does it mean? I mean, does it mean I have to build my own API so I can kind of act similar to these guys?
I think it's very important also for the bigger and the existing bank to move way more to a layered model. To also start thinking in that API model where different layers deliver functionality to each other that gives you the freedom to bring flexibility and start innovating in the front end, and then later on also start upgrading your backend at the same time.
Yeah, now of course I know, but maybe some people in the audience would wonder API. What is an API?
For me, API is a way to talk to an existing system. Everybody
Application programming interface. So you can communicate, you can ask a question. What is my interest?
You can ask a question, you can get a reply, you can do an update.
Right.
It's a standard defined language, how you define to talk to an application.
So basically it's an application without a user interface. It's just like a box that has data and it has functionality, and I can ask the box for some input, and then I can visualize it in any user experience model.
Totally, yeah.
Great. Okay, so I think that's important. So I guess also in a large legacy infrastructure, we could say, let's start to expose our core capabilities via an API. So we can reuse that in an omni-channel customer journey. Cool, okay. Let's move on. So what we would like to do in the next 3 slides is basically analyze a little bit more in depth what's going on in these layers. What is the UX layer, what is the API layer, and what is kind of the orchestration layer, because that's also a pretty important component. So the first layer is, of course, it really starts with the end user, and it starts with that kind of omni-channel brand consistency, I guess, right?
Yeah, we said the first step in omnichannel is making sure that as a consumer I get the same brand experience no matter what device or channels.
Yeah. Okay, so what you now see as a trend is the notion of widgets or tiles or UI elements, whatever. It doesn't really matter. But basically, we're talking about optimized UX, user experience design fragments. And these user experience components, just like Netflix, just like Uber, just like Facebook or LinkedIn, they're optimized to enable the end user. Secondly, these user interface elements are reusable on any device. So there's a technology framework that can actually scale from a very large screen to a very small screen, but you can basically reuse the same UI elements. People refer to this as responsive design. And what is very important about this, A, it helps you with a more efficient delivery model. B, it helps you with brand consistency. Right? Another key element with these UX elements is that you are basically you have unlimited flexibility in how you visualize your brand experience. You can take any look and feel, you can mix and match these widgets, you can combine information and data from multiple sources into what people refer to as a composite application. So your banking experience is no longer, let's say, a siloed type of thing where you cannot make any changes. No, it's basically built with UI Lego building blocks. You can change these building blocks, you can add building blocks, and then finally, you can wire these building blocks, these UI elements, to any backend API. Right? So that's the first layer. Then the second one, omni-channel handover and orchestration. What is this?
Yeah, so we started out with thinking from the UX and marketing perspective with the widget trend we see there.
Yeah.
So now we move to the banking IPA and the banking layer. Well, we saw that there is very important to have APIs available and to do orchestration, especially to make omni-channel also possible. So what we see here on the screen is, for example, how somebody moves from a mobile device to doing something in his home to maybe accessing something in your car dashboard. If you take it very wild and talk about
If you
the
drive this nice Tesla, you definitely have a screen,
probably you
right?
have your screen there, and maybe you can run a banking app from as well there. But to make that possible, it's very important that they talk to the same underlying orchestration engine, so you have access to the same customer profile.
So basically, this layer, probably it will recognize the customer. Who are you? What are you authorized to see? What are your preferences? What do you want to see? Maybe depending on your context. And then maybe if I would apply for, let's say, a loan, I could just say save for later. I could save it, or even if I don't even push the save button, it will just remember it if I would leave it, right?
It will persist my sessions, making it indeed possible that ideally I click a button, but even if it's very smart that you say, hey, I know Jelmer was running late for his train. I know he stopped filling in that form. So next time when he opens his office computer, let's make sure
Jelmer,
everything is there.
this is so normal. I mean, I have that with my email, I have that with my Facebook, I have it with LinkedIn. Whatever I do on any device, if I halfway have to leave it, I can pick it up on any other device.
You have it with your Netflix. You have it with most of your cool social tools that started in the internet age.
Right.
We see a lot of banks and financial institutions that started way before and now have to upgrade the architecture to get there.
To get there, right. Okay, that's fine. Okay, then the next one, the API stuff.
Yeah, we started out, of course, this story by focusing on the customer. And if you focus on the customer, you have to think about the moments of truth. And you can only start creating those moments of truth when you actually have APIs for your core processes to start delivering properly on the moments of truth.
So, in the IT community, people have been talking about service-oriented architecture for a decade. The service bus, the BPM engine, etc. And people kind of say, okay, this is the nirvana. Everything will be web service exposed. But, some people really get it. But a lot of these initiatives are halfway, half-baked. I guess what is really nice about this slide is that, it's essential to have the capability to make APIs. All the disruptors use APIs. So the big banks have to pursue an API type of strategy. But what is how do you create a roadmap for your APIs? How do you prioritize the API development? I guess what's really nice about this philosophy, if you are customer centric and if you're outside in, you basically start with the moments of truth for your end customer. And then you start to reason back what APIs are essential in a minimum viable product to enable these type of customer journeys. Right? Okay, so quite a technical story, but Omni-Channel, in the end of the day, to summarize it, is brand consistency, flexible UI building blocks that you can put in any type of composition and you can run on any device. And then how do we wire these little UI building blocks to an orchestration layer that totally understands the customer, their permission rights, their access rights, their preferences, and of course also whatever they do on different devices, it will act just like Netflix, like a seamless experience. And then finally, the lower layer, how do we consume data and functionality out of our core systems, but maybe also out of the cloud, out of the internet ecosystem? And how do we use these different sources, both inside the bank as well as outside the bank, to create these kind of new customer-centric mashup type of applications? Cool, let's move to the third topic. We're on the half hour, so we have a couple of minutes left to move into this one, halfway, good timing. The third topic is about regain control of your digital strategy. Jelmer, what do we mean with that?
I think it's very important that when you start about innovating and then when you start disrupting, you are in control. That you're not controlled by a vendor, that you're not controlled by IT, but we start moving to a collaboration model within a bank that can really accelerate innovation. To do that, we need to bring together the most important stakeholders.
So we meet a lot of people actually that are extremely innovative in their ideas and in their vision, but they're basically struggling to make it happen. They would fully agree with most of the stuff here in the webinar and say, we're dreaming of this, but how can we really make this happen, right? Because we have to operate within the constraints of our organization. So imagine you are on the IT side, say, great to innovate, guys, but in the end of the day, we need to have these APIs, and it's not easy. Great, but we need to have uptime of our legacy systems. Great, but we first have to do single sign-on. You hear a lot of great, like it, but. So what is important actually is to really have top-down leadership vision and also an organizational model where in order to make these customers happy and to really focus on these moments of truth for the end customer, basically these customers are quite simple. the right thing at the right time on the right device. Seamless, easy, simple, no friction, and totally personal and relevant. We know exactly what these guys would like to have. But how can we now organize the business and IT collaboration to different set of DNAs, different domains, typically working in different buildings, different cities? How do we actually make them work together?
I think this is a learning we got from mBank. mBank is a very innovative bank based out of Poland, but now active in even more countries across Eastern Europe. And they shared this recently in their presentation. They say for them to make it successful, they noticed first of all they had to fix the siloed digital banking team. Because in most cases you have a separate UX group, a separate IT group, a separate business group. But in reality, that UX group doesn't even exist. You only have to worry about IT and business, but they're working from different buildings, not talking to each other, and no way to improve that.
We see this happening a lot with all our clients in Backbase. This is probably the number one challenge, is that there are disruptors in the market, but these guys act like startups. They're lean, they're tight, they're agile. So the biggest enemy of this disruption and enablement is basically the constraints and the organizational model of most banks, small and big. So the guys at mBank, I think they made some pretty aggressive decisions. And forget about where they are located. mBank is probably one of the most innovative disruptors in banking in their home market with millions of end customers. And they are a traditional bank, but they said, okay, listen, this is our current situation. And this is from their slides, so this is public information. They say, we had a team of around 200 people. We had a budget of 30 million. We had to do something in 14 months. We had a lot of code. We had a lot of test conditions, whatever. 1,700 screens, 4 million customers, 3 countries. You know, a pretty familiar situation for some of the people here in the audience. An average, medium to large bank that need to execute on its digital strategy. And these guys, I think they made some brilliant, aggressive decisions to make it happen.
They wanted to launch their new bank with many new features in just 14 months. And to make that possible, they said, we're going to break all the silos. Just start from there. We're just going to move every team that's essential, so our team of 200 people, not a separate IT office, not a separate business office, not a separate UX office. We're going to move them all to one dedicated location to really start working together.
So they went to a hip part of town. They hired the right office facility, a type of office you would expect with Netflix or Google or whatever, like a startup. And they put all the relevant people inside that building to make this project happen.
Yeah.
And these guys are just on one mission, just like a startup, one mission to do this project.
But with that, of course, you give the people a lot of freedom. That was for them very important. We can only innovate like a disruptor, like a Netflix, when our people are free and when they have the freedom to start innovating.
And the accountability, because there's the budget and there's the deadline.
With freedom comes accountability. So of course there are deadlines, of course there are targets, but mixing them and bringing them to the right balance. The guys, we have to deliver something and we have to deliver fast because there's something changing in the financial market. But at the same time, to give them the freedom to innovate, as I think most people neglect to do.
So what is great about this part, they didn't start an innovation lab, right? Let's do an innovation lab. Let's build a prototype. No, they said, let's build the real thing. And they did.
They really did it.
They did it. Awesome.
Yeah.
What is also very nice is, of course, there's the motivational stuff and but what is critical here, the core value is collaboration. All the different disciplines, and only you see here simplified, only 3 here, the IT disciplines, the business disciplines, and the UX disciplines, really physically working in agile teams. So you could enter a Netflix or a Spotify innovation office somewhere in the world. You can enter their office. It's exactly the same operational model. So act like a lean startup and behave like that. If you want to be a disruptor, if you want to be a challenger, if you want to have agility, probably innovation in your business model or in your operational model is essential. Good.
Yeah, and the only way to really make that successful is also to kind of apply that lean startup principle. If you really want to collaborate with multiple teams, multiple functional teams, it's very important to start building, start measuring, start learning, and keep on improving.
Yeah, for some of you in the audience who are not familiar with the Lean Startup, there's this great author, Eric Rice. He wrote this book, Lean Startup. There's a whole set of books and methodologies now available that actually help you to understand what are the principles to do a lean startup. And I guess this lean startup is really for small companies that have a great new business idea, as well as for any medium to large size company in any industry. And especially in banking, I think having these silos in place, clearly from the past, we know how they operate, and we know how they can slow down things and how they can dramatically increase project costs without real business or customer value. So I would think it's great inspiration to start look into this stuff. What is also essential, if you look at this philosophy, is don't make the project too big. I guess, right? Start small, run experiments, ask customer feedback, run real-world multivariate tests, so you can really see what elements work well.
Yeah, also in that startup world, people call that their MVP, their minimal viable product.
Right.
And of course, that means start small and iterate fast, but it doesn't mean that you only deliver the tires when you try to build a car. There's that picture going around on Twitter, I like that very much, that say if your end goal is to build a car, don't start with the tires, start with a skateboard.
Yeah.
Make people already, giving them a means of transportation that's quicker to deliver before you can deliver that end goal, that car.
I think that is extremely difficult for most business people to understand. And we were suffering that in Backbase also in the earlier days. Like, we like to have as many features into the product. It should be as complete as possible. So you create a lot of pressure on your developer teams, where basically this would argue, don't do that. Just really focus on the essentials. Just focus on the base thing. It might not be your end state, but it's a better way to make something small, get customer feedback, and grow from there.
Now you see that as examples we shared in the beginning. If you look at a bank Simple or Simple, if you look at the lending club, they do one thing very well.
Yeah.
Simple starts out with just your current or your checking account. Lending club just starts just with peer-to-peer lending. Very focused, doing that very well before expanding full-blown in the financial industry.
Yeah, yeah, cool. Okay, so actually small is better.
Small is
minimum viable product.
But it should be viable, and everything, if it's viable, is with the customer in mind, with the customer at heart.
And I guess if you do that and you have the trust in the team that over time, based on the customer, the product will mature. It will become better. It will become more comprehensive.
Yeah, and also
so it's just it's a different journey to get to the same end state.
You talk about trust in the team, but it's also trust from the customer in you as a company. I think that's also a link to our next topic. So if we move to topic 4, it's very important for the coming year, and we give you this as one of the main focus points, is define your inspiring purpose.
Yeah, so what do we mean with that? If you look at a lot of companies outside of banking, there's a bit of, let's say, start with the why, or there's a little bit of like a purpose. So for instance, with Nike, to bring inspiration and innovation to every athlete in the world. And by the way, if you have a body, you are an athlete. It's kind of a movement. People like to become part of that movement. They appreciate that movement. And that's kind of exactly what we see happening in banking. People outside digital, outside the realm of technologies and APIs and agile multifunctional teams, forget about all of that. They do it also in a different way. And that's marketing, that's branding.
Yeah, but you see more and more with startups, people want to be part of it.
Yeah, and why is that?
The biggest way Uber grew was because people were showing, hey, look what I can do. I can order a taxi cab from my smartphone. Isn't that cool?
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
And you start telling each other about it. Simple was like that hot trend on the Twitter. Everybody's saying, hey, this is going to really reinvent banking. So finding that coolness, people want to be linked to a company in a cool way, even to a bank. So you need to find that inspiration, find that trust in your band, and you want to be cool to be associated with.
We see that happen quite a lot. People kind of, they define a little bit of like a purpose or an oath, or they basically start to rely on values. They say, these are our values. This is the stuff we care about. And then apparently something happens that people want to become part of it, or at least they want to support it.
Yeah, you want to, of course, work with products that make you feel proud and enrich your life.
I guess if you really have a purpose, people are also slightly more forgiving. Is that correct?
Yes. If you feel that a brand or a company is more a person, it's also easier to accept and understand that even big companies,
they try, they do their best, they make mistakes, as long as they correct it.
As long as they're human, I think that's really about hitting on the human factor. It's okay.
Yeah.
Especially if you keep on delivering and really making sure that the customer comes first. Even if you make a mistake, if in the rest of your actions, they feel that you're personal, you feel that you care.
So basically create a personality, a brand like Nike, like
Like
etc.
Neuven here, and we have another example that's from Oregon, the Bank. They do that very, very nice. They're really becoming part of their community.
But this is great. So they're saying, welcome to a place where subprime never was and common sense has always been. So that's kind of a statement, right? So that's like this is what we are.
They're really defining themselves, setting them apart, and people say, hey, we can link myself. I can link my common beliefs to this bank because they talk the same language.
Back to basics. Great. Awesome.
And they're actually going back to basics. This is one of their branch offices where they're hosting a sing-along or a singing concert or a singer-songwriting contest. And I think this is very cool. I don't say everybody should do that. And I think at a certain moment I will be very annoyed every time I get to an ATM, somebody is singing there. But it shows that they're human.
But I guess only do this if you believe it, right? It has to be 100% authentic. You have to do this in any vein of the company for this to succeed.
It has to be real.
It has to be real for total.
And for a lot of banks, it would not be hosting a singer-songwriting contest, but something that really makes you stand out and makes you define that personal relationship you have with your customer.
Cool. All right. So then let's wrap it up and go to the QA. We have some questions. Guys, in the question panel of your GoToMeeting, you can actually enter questions if you have. We'll try to answer as many as possible of that. A short, quick wrap-up about Backbase, who we are. Just 3 slides for people that are not familiar with Backbase. Backbase is a software company. We help banks and financial services around the world with their digital transformation. We help them to implement their API strategy and optimize their online customer experiences. We do this for over 50 large banks, medium to large banks around the world. And basically our real core competence is how do we help banks to kind of create these seamless customer journeys across any device? How do we make them outside in customer friendly? Let's move to the Q&A.
Yeah, great. So as Jouk said, please use the control panel to ask your questions. You can even participate on Twitter, where I've seen some of the tweets. And Jouk, a question we get a few times here in the panel I see is about Omni-Channel and actually defining the business case for Omni-Channel. Of course, we realize that people are using multiple devices, but really implementing a complete Omni-Channel strategy with handover, what's the business case? How we get money back?
Well, yeah, great question. Well, there's a huge cost saving on the on the development and on the maintenance side. What you typically see that in the last 20 years, banks have been adding new channels. So there was the call center channel, they invested in call center technology. Then there was the web channel, they started to invest in websites and internet banking. Now you have mobile. And in all these different new channels, they basically created a lot of, let's say, legacy code and code duplication for adding these new channels. So I think one huge cost saver with some of our clients is that they can actually optimize, they start to do this work, let's say, to optimize the end customer journey for the web or for mobile. But then once that is running, they can reuse these same widgets and these same user interface elements also to empower employees in the branch or in the call center over time, deprecating a lot of these legacy systems. So I think potentially there's a huge cost saver by just eliminating duplicated code between the different channels. Secondly, if you look at brand consistency, it is one of the key things requested by customers to make it sure that it is consistent and easy. And especially in the case, I would say, if you look at handover points, especially in online sales and most frequently use self-service capabilities, I would dramatically focus on those areas, because in those sales cycles, you simply can just increase online revenue. And in these frequently used self-service cases, you can just offload pressure in the branch with a very expensive cost per contact, as well as in the call center. If you like, just send us an email at info@Backbase, and we can share you a report from McKinsey, where McKinsey shows that if you do digital transformation well, and digital transformation is basically on any screen, then basically you can reduce your cost operating model of the bank by 14%. So a lot of these digital transformation programs basically aim to reduce the cost model of the bank and basically increase margin. So I'm not sure who's it in the audience, but feel free to ask us, and we'll send you the report.
Yeah, everybody, you will receive an email within 48 hours with the slides and the YouTube video of this webinar. And of course, if you have follow-up questions, you can always reply to that email and also get the report Jouk is talking about. Jouk, a little bit about traditional banks. We're now talking about the lot of challengers, the disruptors, and we're telling now, hey, banks, you have to step up, accelerate digital transformation to be ready for 2015. But of course, some banks are already seeing this and already fighting this. So, what do you see being successful and working? What are already some of the bigger banks fighting back and disrupting themselves?
Yeah, I think we already discussed the major challenge, I guess, and that's really the operational model. Still, that you have people that are believers, people that are now empowered to do this. There's the awareness, there's the budget stuff. There are people defining major programs to make this happen. I think the biggest hurdle is actually how do you behave like a startup. So I think the mBank example you discussed, you kind of presented, Jelmer. I think that is a very important example. On how to, they had 4 million customers, they had 30 million, they had the people, they had the line of code, they had everything. It's about the mixture of how to apply these ingredients together and make them really effective.
And
does that make sense? Do you see
sense.
Something else?
Now I see more and more of indeed traditional banks, for example, doing a two-way model. On one end, they're trying to innovate what they have in their existing legacy stack,
Yeah.
and next to that, launching, for example, a new brand to accelerate even faster.
Yeah, that's definitely another model. We have a few big customers inside Backbase that work with our platform, and they start with a new neobank. So basically, they said we're not going to transform the major bank, but maybe we even accept that the major bank over time might lose some market share, but we would like to have our new startup bank grow faster, and as a whole in the group, basically we grow. Yeah. So that's a different model. It's basically they don't even use the same brand. They really give people all the authority and the freedom to act like a startup and make it happen. Yeah, true.
Totally.
What is also interesting is that people in those type of more innovative parts, I think you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You don't have to build all the logic yourself. The more we move into an API-based ecosystem, of course, everything within the guidelines of compliancy. But you can do a lot of quick wins if you start to think in partnerships where different technology partners, different back-end partners can already provide pretty much turnkey capabilities. And you really focus on your API and your UX strategy on making it happen. So you don't have to build the whole plane. You can get a lot of ingredients already semi-manufactured ready, and it becomes more of an assembly engagement and a UX engagement, if that makes sense.
Totally. What I noticed in our webinar, and also that's reflected a bit in the questions, that we talk quite a lot about some retail banking examples, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is digital transformation omni-channel then only for retail banks?
No. It's we see at least what we see from Backbase, and that's in North America, and that's in Asia Pacific and Europe. We see very strong momentum in wealth management, especially wealth managers that do realize that startups like Betterment, Wealthfront are really in the market there to eat their lunch. So in the wealth management space, people are really start to consider to change their operational model. And what I mean with that, the classic model is the human advisor, the wealth manager, the trusted guy with the network. It's really like you don't even have a relationship with the wealth management institute, but you have a relationship with that individual who's basically helping you to manage your wealth. What you now see is that they will continue to have that model, but they have to fade in somehow that kind of algorithm-based kind of investment model. So they're hedging their bets, and they are doing probably in the next 5 years they're going to make a nice transition, and be operating in both models and mixing those models. Also in commercial banking, we see a lot of new initiatives happening in commercial banking, where there is an incredible amount of inefficiencies and poor UX. Probably the commercial banking space is the most underserved market. If any industry should be concerned about a Uber effect, I think it's commercial banking, because there's so much inefficiency over there, especially in the international context, especially in the context of international payments and treasury. It's mind-blowing. So that is for sure. I'm not sure if it's about going to happen big time next year, but in the next couple of years, it's very ready for transformation.
Totally. So commercial banks, watch out, start investing in digital transformation.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first part is really do this well, they will gain.
Totally. Yeah, sure. I was just reading at the question here, and that was one guy a little bit being skeptic,
What's
saying
up, disruptors, right?
disruptors. We talk about Meuven and Simple, but let's be honest, how many customers do they have?
Yeah, totally. You're totally right. And I think so far we're totally not impressed with their numbers, right? We're not. Who cares? Those numbers are not relevant. I'm way more interested in the lending club type of examples or the Uber type of examples. What is also very interesting, if you look at mBank, mBank also says, who cares? Simple, 100,000 customers, who cares? But if you look at mBank, they are now doing it at a scale of 4 million and they're doing a global expansion. And bet you that in the markets, in the geo markets they operate, with this level of kind of omni-channel customer experience, they are grabbing market share because they make it incredibly easy to work with the bank, and especially on selling new products, like getting a loan in less than X minutes, or all these type of kind of Uber type of innovations they do. So I think the more you have an innovative edge, or the more you have scale as in install base, the more you can make a dent in the universe.
Very good. With that, I want to thank you all very much for attending this Backbase webinar. I will make sure that everybody receives the recording and the slide deck tomorrow, all in your inbox, and you're free to share that with your colleagues if you like.